this episode, we run a spaced review that is meant to make the logic of metrics, analytics, and planning feel natural even when you are under pressure and tempted to rely on gut instinct. The pressure point for many SOC teams is that urgent work arrives constantly, and the idea of stepping back to measure, analyze, and plan can feel like a luxury. The truth is that under pressure is exactly when these skills matter most, because pressure amplifies confusion, makes shortcuts more tempting, and turns small process flaws into major delays. Metrics are what tell you where the system is actually struggling, analytics are what help you understand why the struggle is happening, and planning is what turns that understanding into change that sticks. If any one of these is missing, you either act without evidence, or you measure without meaning, or you understand without improving. This spaced review is designed to reinforce the mental connections so you can recall them quickly and apply them consistently. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A key idea to keep in your mind is that metrics and analytics are not separate from operations, because they are a part of operational control, like instruments in a cockpit. When everything is calm, it is easy to ignore instruments and fly by sight. But when conditions are turbulent, instruments become essential. In ASOC, turbulence looks like alert surges, complex incidents, confusing signals, and stressed teams, and flying by sight becomes guessing. Metrics provide the instrument readings, such as how long work is taking, where backlogs are forming, and how noisy signals have become. Analytics provides the interpretation, such as whether delays come from missing context, unclear handoffs, poor signal quality, or data gaps. Planning is the course correction, meaning the set of improvements that remove constraints and reduce uncertainty over time. When you remember this analogy, you stop thinking of metrics as reporting and start thinking of them as control. Control is what keeps operations stable when workload and risk are high. The first spaced review anchor is mission alignment, because a metric that is not connected to what the SOC is trying to accomplish will mislead you when decisions matter most. The mission is not to close the most tickets or to produce the most alerts, because those are activities and not outcomes. The mission is to detect meaningful threats, respond with defensible decisions, reduce impact, and improve capability over time so future incidents are handled better. Under pressure, it is tempting to measure what is easy, such as volume, and to treat high volume as success, but that is a trap. Mission-aligned metrics tend to focus on effectiveness and readiness, such as how quickly high-risk activity is recognized, how accurate triage decisions are, and how consistently response actions are applied. Efficiency metrics still matter, but they must be paired with quality to avoid rewarding speed that sacrifices correctness. When you anchor to mission, you choose measures that guide the right behavior even when people are stressed. The second anchor is the difference between metrics and analytics, which helps prevent the common failure where teams stare at numbers and still do not know what to do. Metrics summarize, and analytics explains, so a metric might show that time to triage is increasing while analytics helps you discover whether the cause is noise, missing context, or slowed handoffs. Under pressure, teams often jump straight from a metric to a conclusion, blaming individuals or assuming threat activity has changed, when the real driver might be a data pipeline change or an operational dependency. The discipline is to treat metrics as a signal that triggers a question, not as an answer that ends the conversation. Analytics is the process of asking what changed, where it changed, and why it changed, using segmentation and pattern recognition rather than instinct. This is also where you remember that averages can hide important variation, so analytics should examine distribution and categories. When you keep these roles clear, you avoid the cycle of reporting numbers without learning anything from them. The third anchor is segmentation, because pressure often causes people to collapse everything into one big number that feels simple but hides the real story. ASOC does not handle one kind of work. It handles different severities, different alert types, different asset categories, and different response paths, and performance can vary widely across those dimensions. A single average time can look acceptable while high-severity cases are delayed, or it can look poor while most important cases are handled well, and only a noisy category is consuming time. Segmentation means breaking the story down in the few ways that matter most, such as separating high severity from low severity, separating high-volume noisy categories from rare high-impact categories, and separating critical assets from less critical ones. Under pressure, segmentation helps you prioritize because it shows where the risk truly accumulates. It also protects teams from unfair conclusions because it acknowledges that not all cases are equal in complexity. When segmentation is part of your mental model, you can interpret metrics quickly without being misled by simplistic summaries. The fourth anchor is quality versus speed, because pressure makes speed feel like the only thing that matters, yet speed without quality often increases risk. Quality in this context means decisions are defensible, evidence is sufficient, and the same kind of case is handled consistently across analysts. A team can drive down time by closing quickly, but if cases are reopened frequently, escalations are reversed, or real threats are missed, the operation is not improving. This is why paired measures are important, such as coupling time to triage with indicators of correctness and rework. Under pressure, it helps to remember that faster is only better if it is still right, and right is only helpful if it is timely. So the goal is balance rather than optimization of one dimension. Quality also includes signal quality, meaning whether alerts provide enough context to support fast, confident decisions. When alerts are noisy or ambiguous, analysts must spend time proving benign activity, which slows everything and increases frustration. By keeping the quality lens active, you avoid rewarding behavior that looks productive but actually weakens security. The fifth anchor is bottlenecks and constraints, because analytics should lead you to the few places where improvement will have the largest effect. Under pressure, teams often try to improve everywhere, which spreads effort thin and produces little sustained change. Bottleneck thinking asks where work accumulates and why, and the reason is usually one of a few themes: noise, missing context, unclear ownership, delayed approvals, or missing telemetry. Once you identify the constraint, you focus improvement effort there, because relieving a constraint increases throughput and reduces delay across many cases. This is why noise reduction and context enrichment are such high-impact improvements, because they affect many cases and reduce cognitive load. Bottleneck thinking also helps you see that handoffs and waiting time can dominate total duration, so improvements might involve coordination agreements rather than technical changes. Under pressure, this perspective keeps improvement focused and realistic, because you choose the leverage point that will actually change outcomes. When you learn to spot constraints quickly, planning becomes easier, because you are not guessing at what to fix. The sixth anchor is turning measurement into planning, which is the step where many teams struggle because they confuse observing a problem with changing the system. A plan turns metrics into sustained change by converting diagnoses into outcome-focused initiatives with ownership, sequencing, and verification. Ownership matters because improvement work will be displaced by daily emergencies unless someone is accountable for driving it. Sequencing matters because improvements often depend on foundations, such as data quality or playbook clarity, and doing advanced work on weak foundations creates noise and frustration. Verification matters because plans can create good feelings without creating real outcomes, so you need to check whether the improvements actually move the metric in a meaningful way and whether quality stayed intact. Under pressure, this can feel like extra work, but it is what prevents the SOC from repeating the same pain cycle each month. A plan also includes decision rules for when metrics trigger action, so you are not constantly reacting to minor fluctuations. When you remember this structure, planning becomes a routine habit rather than a special event. The seventh anchor is communication, because metrics under pressure can become political unless they are communicated clearly and respectfully. Leaders want a credible picture of risk reduction and resilience, and teams want metrics that reflect reality and recognize the complexity of their work. Communication must therefore include definitions, context, and limitations so leaders trust the numbers, and it must include quality signals so teams respect the story and do not feel pushed toward shortcuts. Under pressure, it is tempting to simplify too much or to hide uncertainty, but hiding uncertainty destroys trust when reality contradicts the report. A better habit is to communicate what the metric indicates, what it does not prove, what changed in the environment that might affect interpretation, and what actions are being taken in response. This turns performance reporting into a shared understanding rather than a blame exercise. When communication is honest and consistent, it builds support for the improvements the plan requires, especially when those improvements depend on partner teams. Under pressure, alignment is a force multiplier, and metrics can either build alignment or destroy it, depending on how they are used. The eighth anchor is sustainability, because pressure makes burnout risk invisible until performance suddenly degrades. Metrics can reveal sustainability problems through persistent backlog growth, rising rework, constant after-hours spikes, and low time available for improvement work. A SOC that ignores these signals may try to push speed harder, which increases errors and accelerates burnout, creating a downward spiral. A maturity mindset treats sustainability as a security outcome because tired analysts miss patterns and make mistakes that attackers exploit. Under pressure, it is essential to remember that the goal is not to squeeze more work out of the same capacity indefinitely, but to reduce wasted effort by improving signal quality, context, and workflow clarity. When you address sustainability, you protect quality and resilience, and you also protect the ability to keep improving. This is why metrics should include indicators that reflect workload health, not just incident outcomes. When sustainability is part of the plan, performance becomes steadier, and steadiness is a sign of maturity. Another spaced review point that ties these anchors together is to keep a simple mental loop. Observe, explain, decide, change, verify. Observe is your metrics, which reveal where performance and workload are shifting. Explain is your analytics, which uses segmentation and evidence to identify causes rather than blaming or guessing. Decide is your planning choice, which prioritizes the highest impact constraint and defines outcomes and ownership. Change is the execution of improvements, introduced in controlled steps that avoid creating new chaos. Verify is checking that the change moved the metric in the intended direction while preserving quality and not creating a new bottleneck elsewhere. Under pressure, this loop helps you avoid two extremes, which are thrashing with random changes or freezing and accepting the status quo. The loop gives you a disciplined way to react to real signals, not to emotions, and it turns pressure into information rather than into panic. When the loop becomes automatic, the SOC can improve even while it is busy because improvement becomes part of operations rather than an afterthought. In closing, this spaced review is meant to help you recall that metrics, analytics, and planning are not separate topics, but parts of one operational control system that becomes most valuable when conditions are hardest. Mission alignment keeps metrics meaningful, analytics prevents misinterpretation, segmentation reveals the true shape of risk and workload, and the balance of speed and quality protects defensibility. Bottleneck thinking focuses improvement on constraints that matter, and planning turns measurement into owned, sequenced initiatives with verification so change becomes sustained. Clear communication earns leader trust and team respect, while sustainability metrics protect the human capacity that the entire operation depends on. When you keep the observe, explain, decide, change, verify loop in your mind, you can apply these ideas under pressure without drifting into guesswork or vanity reporting. Over time, these habits make the SOC more predictable, more resilient, and more capable of continuous improvement, which is exactly what maturity should feel like.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.